welcome back to Go Big and Go Homeschool. My name is Maggie, and it is a beautiful sunny day here in Las Vegas. The kids are outside. My husband's helping someone do math downstairs. It's quieter than it usually is, and that means I get to do the second video of the day for you. It's a miracle. It's unprecedented. Of course, I will be talking about books. I want to talk to you about the Literary Life Podcast Challenge 2 for 22. If you watched my previous video on the Adult Challenge, you're familiar with how that works. And my kids agreed to do the challenge this year as well. As Christmas gifts, I bought everybody their own Literary Life Commonplace book. And this will be a place for us to not only keep track of the 2 for 22 challenge, but to be read lists, book reviews, places to draw sketches about your readings, pages to do commonplace quotes, which is just a fancy way of saying writing down stuff that stuck out to you from your reading. I wanted them to be fun and enjoyable and not feel so much like school, but the kids really seem to like doing their narration and copywork in these books, and I'm all for that. So I wanted to talk to you about some of the choices that we have for the Kids Challenge for 2022. So the kids that I have home right now range from teenagers down to toddlers, and there is just no way that I can find books that will appeal to all ages for all of these categories. I'm sure that as the year goes by, we're going to be changing some things around. This is not hard and fast. These are just some ideas, and it'll be a good mix of books that we read aloud together versus books that the kids read on their own. So here are the categories for the 2 for 22 Literary Life Podcast Kids Challenge. First category is a novel from the golden age of children's literature. Our new read will be Wind in the Willows. Most of my kids at home have never heard it. Our reread will be Anne of Green Gables. It's rather hard to find an unabridged version of The Wind in the Willows these days. I happened to stumble across this in a little bookstore in Tucson when my husband and I took a little trip down there recently. The next category is a book of myths. So one of them needs to be Greek and Roman, and for that I chose a Nathaniel Hawthorne version. The other needs to be non-Greek or Roman. And many of the books on our shelves contain one single myth or another illustrated from different parts around the world. We may delve into those, but in case we don't, I bought a book of Viking myths for them to enjoy. The next category matches the adult category for a Shakespeare play or retelling, a comedy and a tragedy. Of course, for the comedy, we'll be doing A Midsummer Night's Dream. This is the second time through doing A Midsummer Night's Dream with my children, and we're having lots more fun with it this time. We have memorized short portions before. This time around, we're memorizing Duke Theseus's soliloquy at the end, The Lunatic, the Lover, and the Poet. And I got some little printable cutout characters that we colored and mounted on popsicle sticks. We've watched a movie. We're just having a good time with it this year since it's our second time through. I could have chosen a different comedy, but A Midsummer Night's Dream is covered on the podcast. They've already done 2 episodes. I can't wait for the third. I have gained so much more understanding of this play from listening to the podcasts. And I'm considering having the kids listen too. Now, they are a little bit long. I would probably only have my teen boys listen. For our Shakespeare tragedy, the kids are going to join me in reading King Lear. This is new to me. I chose it because it was the one that I put on my own adult challenge for the year. And I chose that strictly based on the fact that there is an Anthony Hopkins King Lear version. Movie version, that is. I don't know if my little ones are going to be so involved with this. They did hang through Macbeth pretty well and handled that brilliantly, so perhaps they could handle King Lear. We'll just see how it goes. And like with all Shakespeare, I'll start with a children's version. We have a lot of resources, so we'll start with one of those. No Fear Shakespeare is great for teens because it has plain English on one side and the Shakespearean language on another. Now, of course, some people don't like these versions because of the temptation to rely too much on the plain English without really just immersing yourself in the Shakespearean language first. I get that. I totally understand that. It is a temptation. However, we plan to read this aloud together. So it'll be a fairly simple matter to stick with the Shakespearean language. And if we get completely bogged down, we don't know what's going on, which happens a lot. This play is new to me this year. Then that's just that's just on the next page to help you out. I really like those. The next category, like the adult challenge, is a biography. One of a boy or man and one of a girl or woman. Now, I have a couple books on my shelves that have lots and lots of examples of this, so I will just have each kid kind of pick which one interests them. We have a couple of books called Boys Who Changed the World. We have one called Girls Who Looked Under Rocks. Both of these seem to be a collection of biographies of inspiring individuals throughout history. I also found this, which looks great. Moth and Wasp, Soil and Ocean, Remembering Chinese Scientist Pu Zilong's Work for Sustainable Farming. It's beautifully illustrated. I'm always looking for living books that cover science and nature. This is also in the Adult Challenge. Two poets featured on the Well-Read Poem. The Well-Read Poem is another podcast that we have come to love. We listen to it every day during morning time. You're supposed to pick 11 poems from one poet, 11 from another. We may find that we love a particular poet and then go read everything that they have. Of course, we have many, many poetry books on our shelves. But we're really enjoying the Well-Read Poems read by Thomas Banks. My boys appreciate that they're hearing a man read poetry well. And it's just easy. It's, I'm subscribed. My speaker's hooked up to my phone. I'm sipping my coffee. Maybe I wasn't entirely ready for morning time. And I can just push play and everybody will settle down and listen to a poem. That's what we're going to roll with this year for this challenge. The next category is dearly beloved to me, and it was not always, and that is the fairy tales category. Over the past 5 or 10 years, I have really come to understand the value of fairy tales as a cornerstone of our education. And I wasn't that homeschool mom in the early years of our journey, something that I regret. And so I reached out to my older daughters and apologized and said, hey, all those times I said I didn't like Shakespeare or fairy tales? I'm sorry. Here's a book. I hope you read these. A few days ago, we were sitting down to our morning time, and I opened my new copy of Grimm's. So this category calls for 11 Grimm's fairy tales and 11 non-Grimm's fairy tales. I went ahead and flipped open Grimm's. I read the introduction to the kids, and the author said that his personal favorite was King Grizzlybeard. I'd never read King Grizzlybeard that I could remember, so we read this fairy tale together, and it was wonderful. It appealed to all ages, so I've got my little 4-year-old coloring, and I've got my middles doing Legos, and I've got my teenagers wrestling or annoying each other in some other way. But everybody listened to this story, and it was a beautiful fairy tale about a snotty princess who openly mocked every suitor that her father, the king, brought before her and said horrible things about them. And particularly, one particular suitor, she mocked him because of his beard and called him King Grizzlybeard. Her father became enraged and said, the next person that walks through that door is who you're going to marry. So when a poor farmer walked through the door, musician, I don't remember, she ended up hitched to this guy, and he brings her to his little hut, finds out she is completely unsuited to many different kinds of work, and they are on the brink of starvation. So her husband says, look, I've arranged for you to be a dishwasher in the castle. I can see that you've repented, and you're really sorry for the things that you said, and you have become a more humble person and set aside your pride. Let's go back to the castle and see if they'll take you on as a dishwasher. When they get to the castle, she is walking into her own wedding feast. Lo and behold, her poor husband is actually King Grizzlybeard in disguise. That was nice. We set aside Grimm's. I pick up our catechism book. I open it to the question we've been working on the past few days, which has to do with Christ's humiliation. The question is, how was Christ humiliated? The answer is one of those long, complicated ones, which is why I've been working on it for so many days, talking about how Christ was born a man, born into a poor family, has suffered the miseries of this life, and took our sin upon himself to redeem us as his bride. I could not have planned it better. The kids made these connections, and we all just sat there in a moment of awe, loving the power of fairy tales. For this next category, we probably have 200 books on our shelves that would do. An otherworld/fantasy/sci-fi book. One by a dead author and one by a living author. For one by a dead author, I chose The Silver Chair because that's where we are in our Narnia rotation. One by a living author, Gregor the Overlander. If you have not had the pleasure of digging into the Gregor books by Suzanne Arms, who wrote The Hunger Games, I highly recommend them. The protagonist is an 11-year-old boy who goes on an otherworld adventure. The next category is nonfiction, history, and then something other than history. I am glad the authors of this challenge laid it out like this because they know that homeschoolers read more history books than anything else. This is already checked off for us. We've already read Otto and the Silver Hand this year, as well as The Whipping Boy for younger kids. For other than history, I wanted to get a copy of Mathematicians Are People Too. I can't find it in a version that's not wickedly expensive, but we do have many other science books, of course, and nonfiction books on our shelves that I could choose from. I already showed you this one. A detective or mystery story, one with a boy detective, one with a girl detective. Of course, we have Encyclopedia Brown and the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew all on our shelves. The older kids could choose from those. I got The Westing Game for my boys. I recall loving that short, fun mystery when I was a teen. For my younger kids, of course, we could choose from A to Z mysteries. Nate the Great, we actually read this the first day that I presented the challenge to the kids, and I bribed them with ice cream if they could read the book in one day, which of course they did because Nate the Great is short and easy. For one with a girl detective, I was looking into either Cam Jansen or A Dog and His Girl. My 8-year-old girl loves dogs more than anything in the world, and she is loving this book. It is a tiny bit above her reading level, so we're reading it together and taking turns. So far, it's a winner. A favorite author of your favorite author. This category is a little tricky because I have a lot of kids and they have a lot of favorite authors. So I just chose for them. They were in bed when I was looking at this category, and I went online and I looked up some of the favorite authors of our favorite authors, and I got The Little White Horse by Elizabeth Gouge. This was a favorite of J.K. Rowling. And I haven't chosen the second one for that category for the year yet. I'm sure we will have no trouble finding a favorite author of a favorite author. The last category is international, books that take place in a country that is not your own. And I wanted to pick 2 books that were just very, very different from each other. So we're going to read Little Pear. These will likely be read-alouds for the whole family, even though they're a little bit below my teens' reading level. They don't mind. whenever I pick something a little easier for them to pass around during morning time and take turns reading. The second choice is actually a graphic novel. Always fun to get one or two of those. This is called When Stars Are Scattered, and this is about brothers in a Kenyan refugee camp. Actually, know nothing about this book. I'll give you a review. I hope I remember to do that for you. Another option might be Shen of the Sea, Chinese Stories for Children. A few years ago, we studied Mandarin, and every now and then I like to bring us back into Chinese culture for a day and remember all those phrases that we learned and maybe eat some Chinese food, that kind of thing. After I talked with you about the kids' challenge for the year, I realized there's probably going to be some questions that I didn't answer. Is this our first reading challenge? Yes. I haven't issued a reading challenge to this particular set of kids. Now, when my older graduated daughters were young, we would often do the summer reading program challenge from the public library. It was effective. They enjoyed doing it. And I haven't done anything like that with the kids that I have at home. So I suppose some of you are going to be asking, are there going to be prizes involved? So this is a challenge. The kids really do seem to be excited about filling in all the boxes in their book. They were excited about earning ice cream for finishing their first book of the challenge. But that is not sustainable. I cannot be rewarding all these multiple kids for reading these multiple books. I would be buying ice cream every day. So probably what we'll do is just kind of celebrate a little bit here and there as we go. Some of these books are movies. So when we're finished with the book, we'll read the movie, we'll have some popcorn. Of course, poetry and tea time go well together. And as I will show you in another video, I have brought out my great-grandmother's china, and we have enjoyed having tea time. It's not something I can do all the time, but occasionally, like maybe after we finish the first 11 poems that we've listened to, we'll have a little tea party. I really don't know. I just kind of plan to gauge how things are going as we move along, and if I perceive that the kids feel like the challenge is hard, or they aren't finding the books very, rewarding in and of themselves, which does happen. We all know that sometimes our kids are just not as excited about them as we are. And if I perceive that that's happening, then maybe I'll get a little creative and we'll come up with some way to celebrate or incentivize. Be sure to check out the Literary Life podcast with Angelina Stanford, Thomas Banks, and Cindy Rollins. It's a wonderful way to get some laundry and exercise done. And of course, check out the well-read poem. Thanks for coming along with me. I love talking about books. Happy homeschooling and happy 2022.